All right, hello everyone, and thank you for joining the webinar. My name is Matt Kirby, and I'm the Marketing Manager for Trimble Connect. And hosting the webinar with me today is Marcel Broekmat, the Product Director for Trimble Connect. Today we're going to be talking about how you can leverage Trimble Connect to build beyond the limits of BIM. When we talk about the limits of BIM, we're really focused on three primary issues. The first is training limitations. The inclusion of BIM in the construction process involves a fairly high learning curve. Project stakeholders need to get acquainted with the new technology and ensure that proper training is provided to obtain the desired results. The second issue is budget limitations. BIM often requires a high investment in software applications, implementation fees, and training costs. As a result, many firms struggle to implement BIM throughout the project lifecycle, and they fail to recognize the full potential of the technology. The third limitation is interoperability. Since construction engages numerous stakeholders, it is necessary to have the project data represented in a common, interpretable form so that it can be accurately exchanged among different computer systems and platforms. Many software solutions were originally built as standalone applications and are not designed to share data with other programs. Trimble Connect effectively eliminates these limitations by providing a collaboration tool that serves as the digital backbone for your project. Our open API and available product integrations make it simple for you to consolidate your data in a single common cloud environment. Whether you're a single user or part of a large project or enterprise, Trimble Connect provides options that are both cost-effective and easy to learn with little to no training. With that, I'll now turn to Marcel to further explain the benefits of Trimble Connect in a bit more detail.
Thank you, Matt.
Sure, yeah, so Marcel, for those who are not familiar with Trimble Connect, could you maybe provide a quick introduction to the product?
Absolutely. And I'm going to take this as an opportunity to introduce some features that some of you who currently use Connect may not know. So let's take a look. Before jumping into that demo, a quick recap of what Matt just said. Trimble Connect is all about making the right data available to the right people at the right time. And we do that by making or solving two problems. The first problem is upload of data. We provide an environment where you can upload all of your project data, whether that's 2D drawings or documents, spreadsheets, or 3D models. Doesn't matter, we provide one common data environment where everybody can get access to that data. Then the second piece, and that's where Connect is different from environments like Dropbox or Box, is that we provide that data then in the context of the project. So whether that's a building design or a civil design, you can click on elements to get access to data, and a lot of what we're seeing today really builds on that. So let's take a look at the application. We are in the main application window and are navigating into a project. And once you're in a project, there's a folder structure, not unlike what you see in Windows or your Mac Finder or any other file sharing application. You can navigate to any of these folders and see what files have been shared by team members. And one of the new features that was introduced recently is related to adding further information to these files. So in here, I can click on status, for example, which is a field that I added to my account. So all of the projects now have this field, and I can use that to quickly see, in this case, what the status of a file is, so whether it's in draft or for review or accepted. You set that up as part of your company administration. So those of you who are a company administrator will have access to this area in the application. And when I click on drawing approval here, then you will see the fields that I just looked at. And I can add an option, for example, make that rejected. And as soon as I publish that, all of the files and all of the projects that belong to my account, to my company, will have access to that field. So I can choose that value. What that then does is increase the discoverability of my files that have been shared in the project. So I can use this search functionality and click on advanced search. And with that, I have access to these custom properties. We just looked at status. Let's find everything that has been marked for review. When I search that, it will find me all of the files that have been labeled for review. And there's 3 of them. Once it reaches the accepted stage, I will be able to then perhaps add it to releases. So the releases functionality is basically a folder or a bucket where I can store those. Pretty handy and very helpful to resolve disputes sometimes is the activity panel, where you can see what has been contributed to the project. For example, what views have been created, what users have joined. And I can also discover that activity by looking for groups. And groups are set up in the team area here. You can see we've got 4 team members who may have been assigned to any of these groups. Let's go back to data now and click on Explorer, and we'll navigate to some models. So these models have been uploaded. We accept a variety of model formats. We see some SketchUp, some IFC, some Revit in here, and you can combine models as needed into views. I can activate a view here by clicking on it, and that will open up, in this case, the architectural design in a viewer tab, and we see that here. In the 3D viewer, I can then navigate, select elements, and open up all of the BIM properties that came from the authoring application, as you can see here on the right-hand side of the screen. If I wanted to look inside the building, and this is a new feature that we added, the vertical clip plane, you can click on an element to select on what location you want to create a section, and then look inside the building, and that will cut through the combination of models that have been activated in the 3D view. I can delete like so. If someone needs to follow up on something in the design, I can add a cloud, and I can also create a to-do, and that to-do is a follow-up action that can be assigned to team members, and that capability can replace the spreadsheets that we often see used in project teams. So I'll assign high priority to this one, hit save, and once that is saved, it will create the view for this particular item as well, and the ability to then jump to that specific to-do. So here we see the overview of the to-dos, and when I select it, you will see the description of that item. And there you see I created a previous one with exactly the same view actually in a previous session. Now, when we go back into the, before we do that, let's activate some additional models actually. So I'm going to look inside the project, like the folder navigation that we looked at earlier. And I can include more than just the current model. So I will activate the MEP design in this too. So that shows how you can combine multiple model sources in the same view. It doesn't matter what version of Revit you're using, you can mix and match versions of those files in the same view in Connect. And you can also combine that with SketchUp and IFC files and any other sources that you may have for your project. There we go. So this is the full structural steel at fabrication level of detail, including also the MEP model. So back in the main application, we can see those to-dos as well. I've currently isolated priority 1 or critical, can go to the high priority as well, or search for users and groups again. And this is where you can see the snapshot that was just created for that issue. When I click on it, it will open up the view, so that closes the loop. Now that works on a mobile application as well. So this is my iPhone, and that's the MEP model that we just loaded in the browser as well, but now isolated without the architectural and structural. And the nice thing is that the information for all of these elements is available in your mobile application too. So you carry all of that data in your pocket. Let's take a we'll navigate to the file browser in here as well. So this is all the data that we have on our project. I'll open up the steel structure next and view that in the 3D viewer on mobile. And a feature that is now available to all Business Premium subscribers as well is the status sharing. So when you activate that on your project, you have the ability to pick elements in your project and specify for a certain condition, whether it's been started, whether it's been committed, or when it's completed. And it will record the time at which it reaches that status. So that means that at the end of your project, you can play back exactly when 3D elements change status. That same functionality is available in the Windows client as well. So that's what you see a screenshot for here. All of the elements get a status, and once that status has been shared, it will be uploaded into the Windows client too, or it will be shared through the Connect Cloud and shown in the Windows client too, or in any of the other mobile applications. So that's a quick overview of Connect without the workflow extensions.
Great, thanks, Marcel. So as you were going through that introduction, I did notice some new buttons on the left-hand side of the 3D viewer application. Is this the new workflow extension functionality?
Those are the buttons, so that's what I was referring to. It didn't cover those yet. We did look at the properties of selected elements, but we can take a quick look at those items now. We'll bring back the application window. And I'm loading a view for this steel model here. And we just did this as well, but I'm opening the properties of this specific element. And these are properties that have come from, in this case, Tekla structures. What I can do now with the workflow extensions is add my own custom properties. So I've got some for schedule planning. I've created some for materials management. Let's assign delivery status. And these properties now become part of my project in Connect. I'm setting the delivery date, and I updated this last. So the next time I select that element, I will also have delivery status. The organizer is the other part of the workflow extensions on the left-hand side. You can use to create any kind of breakdown structures as we see here. Then the third piece, part of the workflow extensions, is what I activate here. That's the content browser. This will take a moment, but what we're doing here is load all of the associated data, all of the attributes for all of the model elements that you see in this view. Once that is loaded into that table, you have a pivot table that then creates the ability to interact with your BIM content from a data point of view. So I can select an item in here. Say I click that deck plate. I want to see that in 3D. It will highlight those elements in the 3D space. And I can isolate and activate everything else again.
Great. So you mentioned organizer breakdown structures. Could you maybe give some examples of the breakdown structures and how they're used?
Yeah, sure. So I've got a couple of examples for that. Let's start with one that uses the steel structure model that we looked at earlier. So I'm clicking on that view to load that in the application. And then once that is up, we will use the organizer to talk about the phases that have been defined by the steel fabricator together, of course, with the GC. So as you can see, fabrication level of detail, every bolt, every member is included in this model, and I can interact with it in the browser. Now I can open the organizer panel here, and I'll use the phases here. And the phases, each of these nodes, each of these groups have a number right next to them. That number indicates the number of elements that has been associated with that phase. So 781 for phase 2, 1674 for phase 3. And now when I discuss my plan for steel erection with subcontractors and others involved, I can just use the organizer, isolate those elements that belong to phase 3, and have a much more efficient conversation about what my plan phasing is. Another example uses this architectural model that was created in Revit, and we brought it into Connect through the publisher. And we'll give that a moment to load. And we'll use that to visualize work packages. So another use case for organizer would be, let's position that right. Another use case would be to communicate the contents of work packages or bid packages or budgets, if you will. You can easily visualize that too by linking 3D elements to these codes. So each of these codes, each of these nodes now represent work packages using uniformat coding in this case. And just by clicking on these nodes, I can now visualize what is in scope for those groups. So see 1030-400 has these elements. I can see where they are in the project, and if I wanted to, I can isolate them in the view as well by clicking that button. And again, facilitating communication, and if I wanted to see the additional properties, I just click on the I button to get that data. I've got one more example, and that uses a fabrication model for the facade of the building that Matt and I are in here in Westminster. A very detailed model of all of the windows and curtain walls. And what we've done there is take advantage of the labels that were assigned to those windows and curtain walls to indicate the marks and the phasing for the installation of that. So again, going back to organizer, and we created a breakdown structure there for locations. And in this case, that's a multi-level hierarchy. So it's not limited to just one level of grouping. You can nest groups too. So in this case, we're looking at all of the Mark 3 on floor 2. I could select the other nodes as well and get that highlighted. Again, if you need to give instructions on when elements need to be delivered, when you want to provide information about quantities or discuss space that is needed, this is probably a much better way than doing that based on spreadsheets and 2D drawings that are marked up. I hope that answered your question about breakdowns.
Yeah, absolutely. Seems like a pretty cool tool there. So you mentioned the content browser as well. Could you maybe demonstrate what that is used for?
Yeah, yes, sure. I've got a couple of examples for that as well. So let's go back into the model, and we'll start with a SketchUp model actually. And while that is opening up, that SketchUp model was created with components and with what's called dynamic attributes in SketchUp. And when we select one of those elements in here, let's pick one over here, click the I button. You can see what those dynamic attributes look like. So those came from SketchUp. Now, the nice thing is if those dynamic attributes are included in the SketchUp model, that means that you can feed them into a table. And that's what the content browser is about. We saw that quickly earlier with the steel model. Now it shows the content that has been included in the SketchUp model. So these are names of components. And when I see one that I would like to get a closer look for, I select Show in 3D, and it takes me directly to that element. And it shows me where that is in the project. And I can customize the columns as well that I want to see. And I know that one of the dynamic attributes is called C material. And I can add that to the collection of visible elements and decide how I want to use that for grouping. When I click OK, it shows me a reorganized pivot table. And now I could, for example, find everything that has material concrete assigned to it. So it now has 57 elements selected, including the one that we selected earlier. And all of the individual components are listed below it. So if they would have unique names, I could select those individually too. And there's one gypsum item, and that's located there. So that's how much more, or an increasing amount of value could already be delivered through creation of components in SketchUp as well. Another example uses, I'm going to activate another model. I'll close this one. So we'll use a view in this case, and I'm going to open up the MEP design model here. It was created in Revit, could have been created in SysQ for Revit as well, or Stabi, or any of the other tools that are available for detailed MEP modeling. And MEP entities, of course, have a ton of metadata associated with them, and I can take advantage of that too. See that the initial grouping here shows some invalid names because those properties may not be available, but I can predefine some names as well. And I've got one for Revit MEP. And now I'm grouping by family name and then by type name, and that allows me to then interrogate the model based on that grouping. This exhaust ventilator, you can find that by selecting it in 3D. In this case, there's one family type included in here. Let's find another one. This diffuser has 2 types, and there's 3 of the J type. May be difficult to see, but now I zoom into those, and there they are. So one more example. We're going to load another view. And for that, I'm going to open a detailed rebar model. The nice thing about views is that any selected elements will be retained as well. So in this case, I know that one element, one piece of rebar was selected for this view. So if I wanted to point out to a team member, pay attention to this, then I can keep that selected when I define the view. And you'll appreciate the level of detail, by the way, the constructible level of detail that we're able to present in this 3D viewer. Every individual piece of rebar is loaded here. So a ton of geometry, and of course, with the attributes associated with that, we can then use the content browser to interact with that. So we miss currently the initial or the main grouping criteria. Let's find the name column, and we'll add that to our set of visible columns. And I'm actually going to use that for grouping as well. There we go. So now the names for the rebar coming from Tekla actually indicates the type mark, and I can quickly find out where all 804 instances of that B1 type are located. It's a quick way to find out not just where they are, but as you can see, there's the total weight and weight and other properties as well. If I wanted to highlight specific items, I can override the color, and then I could save a view that I can then share with other team members, perhaps for use in the mobile application. Those views are immediately available in the mobile app too. A nice feature that we've built in as well is to make these persistent, these groups. Do that by saving them to Organizer. So I'm going back to Organizer, and I'll refresh this panel, the Organizer panel. And once that completes loading, you will see a new group there that's called Name, and that is exactly the groups that we just had defined in the Organizer. When I now click these groups, you see that I've got them highlighted in here because they've been selected. You can still make changes, so individual elements can be added or removed from an Organizer too. So let's go back to the content browser once more. So drag and drop columns into the header. So moving them around changes the hierarchy. I can change name to become the second level of the hierarchy of the grouping. And that then allows me to take a look at the materials first and see in 3D where that SR235 material is located. And if I wanted, I can still produce a spreadsheet as well. We're not fans of spreadsheets, but you can still produce them. Last piece that I want to show here is the ability to color code. So your grouping, in this case, it's 2 levels of groups, which may not be ideal, but you can automatically assign a color to each of the groups and then communicate each of those groups based on that color code to team members and stakeholders.
Great. Thanks, Marcel. That's a great overview of the content browser. So as you were going through those demonstrations, I did notice that all of the data from the BIM authoring tool, whether that be Tekla, SketchUp, Revit, or some other authoring tool, seems to be included. What if you need to include data that was not included in the BIM?
Yeah, that does happen. And in many cases that we've seen in use of Connect and also working with other applications was that you would have to go back to the BIM authoring application to add that data. And especially when working in the field or for project management, that may not always be feasible. You don't always have access to the original BIM file, or you may not have that capability on site. So what we've done is we've added the ability, I'll turn off these colors here for a moment. We've added the ability to add your own custom properties. So let me demonstrate that. I'm going to select the organizer, and from there I can open up property set libraries. That opens up a separate UI, the property set manager, and that provides functionality in which you can basically mimic your spreadsheets. All of the rows or columns in spreadsheets can be translated into these property sets. I've got 2 examples here, production schedule, and as I click through these values, you can see how they are defined. We can create a new library as well, so let's create one from scratch. The quality assurance. Within a library, I can then add a new property set. I'm going to call this the QA check 1, and add a property. And for each property, so let's call this inspection A, I can specify what type of property that needs to be. In this case, I want to make that a drop-down choice. It's either approved or rejected. That means that when I enter the value, I can choose from those 2 options. And I also want to add a note. There we go. I can click publish. And that makes that property set, that library, available for the entire project. So everyone who uses this data set, who's active in the project, can use it. So let's select an element here. And I click the I button for the properties. And now I can add properties, and see the quality assurance that we just added is available here. So I can check that box. I want to add QA check 1 to that element, and I can start to fill out the properties through here without going to a spreadsheet, without marking up. I can interact directly with the BIM. I don't have to go back to the BIM module. I can do the same thing when I work with these organizer nodes. So perhaps I want a property or a property set to apply to a large group of elements. In this case, we got resources already assigned to that B1 phase, but maybe I want to assign production schedule to that too. So now I can start to schedule actually, or bring in schedule data for that group of 804 elements. Task name, make that rebar B1, and pick a planned date or copy a planned date, and then hit save. And from that moment on, this group has these properties, and now I can start to interact with that and see the actual schedule data too. Now, all of that data is available in the content browser too. We just saw the crew assignment. I can bring the crew description as well as planned crew count that we saw there into the content browser, maybe group by crew description. And then I can start to take advantage of the fact that I enriched that data set. So now I see crew A, 804 entities, crew B, 697 entities. And if I need to explain to crew A or crew B what they're responsible for, the only thing I have to do is select that group and highlight it in 3D. So that's what we mean by building beyond the creation of BIM. It is the use of BIM by further enriching that data set using the workflow extensions. And we should probably mention there too that all of these workflow extensions that we're demonstrating here are open for integration too. So if you wanted to feed, say, schedule data into that organizer property set or into any of those values, that is possible so that you don't have to fill that out manually, and opens up all kinds of integration opportunities.
Great. Thanks, Marcel. So that was a lot of interesting information on the new workflow extension functionality. I do see we're getting a lot of good questions in on everything that you just presented. So I think now's a good time to go ahead and transition over to the Q&A portion of the webinar, if that's all right.
Sure, yeah.
So first question we have here, we mentioned that Trimble Connect is an open tool. Could you explain what we mean by that?
Yeah, I briefly referred to that a moment ago. So we do offer the ability for integrators to develop on top of Connect through APIs. We make the APIs available for external as well as internal people. Open for all kinds of file formats. So regardless of the source of your BIM, you can bring that data into the Connect environment and build further on that. And we support all of the major BIM formats.
Awesome. So this one is this next question is related to the previous one. Could you name some programs that have been successfully integrated with Trimble Connect?
Yeah, sure. So I'll use a couple of internal ones. Structures, Tekla 2020 as an awesome integration with Connect, where you'll be able to just release versions of your Tekla modeling to Connect and do the viewing by all recipients of the model in the Connect environment. That same group has also built a really nice integration with fabrication software, where you can visualize the status of the fabrication process in the Connect 3D viewer, similar to what we did with the statusing. That is also populated by the fabrication software. It's really nice. Another example might be field points for layout. So the field point software is able to bring in 2D and 3D content for definition of points for layout. And of course, we need to mention the HoloLens. There's actually a native application for HoloLens, Trimble Connect for HoloLens, that uses exactly the data that we just looked at. And then on top of that, we have more than 100 integrators, both internal and external, who take advantage of these capabilities. I see that there's a question coming in about the Revit 2020 plugin. That will be available any day now. We've completed that development. Our apologies for the slight delay there. Will be made available through the website shortly, and you'll be able to find that in the apps page of the web application.
Great. Next question here is about the property sets. Do all users have access to the data that is stored in these property sets?
All users do have access, that's right. So regardless of whether you use property sets or not, so the BIM data was available as well, but the content browser is a feature that is available for everyone. Whether you're a free or personal user, as we call it, or you use a paid subscription, you will always have access to all of the data that is shared through Connect.
Great. So we've been talking a lot about the limitations of BIM. This next question is about the limitations of Trimble Connect. Are there any significant limitations to be aware of in terms of supported user counts, data records, or bandwidth usage?
I will start with the last one, the bandwidth usage. As you saw, the models that we loaded today during the webinar are significant in size. And if you want to view that either in the browser or in your Windows application or on your phone, you first need to download that to the client. And that is, of course, depends on the bandwidth that you have available. If you have just a phone connection, cell phone connection, then that will take a little bit longer. On broadband, that will be faster. Once it is loaded, then you'll see the performance that we saw, but that is, of course, a factor to take into account. There's nothing that we can really do about that. As for the number of data records and number of users and limitations there, maybe worth saying the number of users that we currently have on the platform, which is over 8 million. So more than 8 million people worldwide are using Connect in a variety of ways, either to just share files or upload data, or as a backend, for example, for SketchUp, which has this integrated, or to support workflows like those that we demonstrated today. So in terms of data that can be uploaded and ability to deal with that, I think we've got a proven track record there. In terms of what you are allowed for upload, there's no limitation for paid subscriptions. You can upload as much data as you need to share. For free users, we cap that amount at 10 gigabytes. So.
Great. So for those that are interested in a paid subscription, what are the startup costs for the software, and how much of that is licensing versus implementation services?
So the training options are available through the various divisions in Trimble. There's the divisions provide options to get your team up to speed with Connect. There's also documentation available through our user forum, where you can find the documentation about the latest set of features, including what we demonstrated today with the workflow extensions. Getting started with a paid subscription can be as low as $100 per year. So the Connect Business subscription is $100 per year. That gives you unlimited projects, unlimited data uploads, and you can invite as many people into those projects as you need. One step up from that is the Business Premium. The workflow extensions that we demonstrated today are part of Business Premium. Free and business users can see or read the data, but if you want to create new property sets, or if you wanted to create new organizer groupings, you will need a Business Premium subscription that goes for $250 per year. Above that, we also have options for projects and companies. Those are based on the value of the project or the revenue of a company. We apply a factor, and that gives you then unlimited access for everyone in the project or for everyone in the project. And that's a please contact us response to learn more about what the cost for that is.
And how do I go about purchasing Trimble Connect?
So purchasing can be done through the website for the business accounts, for the business subscription. We offer the ability to purchase with your credit card. That would be a $10 per month subscription. For the annual subscription, as well as Business Premium and the project and company agreements, we recommend you contact either your Trimble contact person, your Trimble sales representation, or your local Trimble partner, and they can work with you to get that started.
Awesome. Great. Well, we've had a lot of great questions here, but we want to be respectful of everyone's time. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. If anybody does have additional questions, feel free to leave those in the comments section. Or as Marcel mentioned, you can visit our website at connect.trimble.com and submit a sales inquiry. And one of our representatives will contact you directly to address those questions. Also, we've recorded today's webinar, so if you are interested in revisiting any of this information that was presented today, then keep an eye out for a follow-up email from us, which will contain a link to the webinar recording. All right, well, I think that's it. So thank you all again once more for joining us today, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.